Lynda, thank you so much for joining me, looking very glamorous as usual.
Thank you very much. Hi, Maria.
Listen, lovely to join. Now, I don't often get to speak to neuroscientists, so talk to me about what a cognitive neuroscientist is and does.
Well, basically, we study how the brain changes behavior and how behavior changes the brain. So it's based on an awful lot of psychology, but we're looking at evidence using MRI scanning equipment, fMRI scanning equipment, EEG scanning equipment, research-based technologies like that. So that's how we work. And we look to see if, for instance, in my particular research, I was looking at unconscious processing of emotion. So people, I would show them whilst they're in an fMRI scanning machine, images, nice, nasty, grotesque, beautiful, boring, anything that will evoke some kind of emotional response, but are below conscious awareness. So they weren't aware that they were actually seeing the images. So then what I did was I was looking to see what bits of the brain were lighting up. And sure enough, my research showed that we certainly do process the emotion way below conscious awareness. And that dictates how we behave. But that's basically how I do it. Well, I do it in academia when I'm working with companies.
That's fascinating. That's really fascinating, because the bit you said that, stopped me there for a moment and made me take a sharp intake of breath, is that how our behavior changes our brain. So you're saying that our emotions influence our behavior, which you all understand, but your brain changes. So wow, I'd like to go deeper into that, if I may, a bit later on. But first of all, how on earth did you become interested in something like this? Why did you suddenly say, right, I'm going to become a cognitive neuroscientist? That's not something you're taught at, not something someone would say to you at, careers day at school.
No, they didn't. They told me I should be a teacher at careers day or a secretary. That's how old I am. So yeah, just really bad, really, really bad. I've been reading about consciousness since I was 14. And when I became a mature student. I did my first degree when my children were really small. And then I did a second degree because I was loving studying so much. And then I found out my professor who supervised my master's was actually interested in consciousness. And it was like a tiny little bit of his biography on his bio on the uni website. And he's a neurophysicist. He's this brilliant person. And I saw this tiny, and I went, oh, Michael, could you please supervise a PhD on consciousness? And he went, yes. I went, no, it's so exciting. I can't tell you how excited I was. So I've always been interested in consciousness, but I've always been interested in how I embrace change so much and nobody else does, or half the population doesn't. So I was thinking, well, why do people do that? Why do people do what they do? Why do people get upset when a new Tesco's comes to town? Or why do people, what happens to a culture when they build a new dam? And why do people, it's like all these whys coming out of my soul. So I just want to know why people do what they do. And I'm particularly interested in unconscious processing and change.
It's interesting because I like change if I'm inflicting it.
Come on my couch.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's you too, because you say you like change. But anyway, so at the time of recording, I think we're entering week 9 of our lockdown, so we're in a pandemic. When this goes out, I'm hoping that we have a bit more freedom. Certainly, I need to get to a hairdresser. What is the biggest problem, would you say, outside health issues that we're facing in relation to our businesses and our lives through this pandemic, from a neuroscience point of view?
I think the biggest issue is uncertainty. Uncertainty, the brain just doesn't do gaps. And when the brain has gaps, it tries to fill them in. It tries to fill them in by needing to see all the news we can possibly see to get some information, becoming hyper vigilant and alert. And we make stories up. We make stories, and then all of a sudden, what we do is we start worrying about the stories we've made up, which may not be true. Then we start rehearsing those stories so they become habitual thinking. then we're on high alert with stress. So all the stress responses are absolutely up there because we're in this worried, horrible story that we're given. And then we're suppressing all those feel-good neurotransmitters, the serotonin, which is the happy chappy, the dopamine, which is all about reward and motivation. All of those things go wrong. So we get locked in this worry, stressful situation that may not come about simply because the brain has to do something. It can't work with nothing. It can't work with gaps. That's why uncertainty is such a hard thing to work through.
You have just described my life in lockdown. You have just described my behaviours. That's incredible. So tell me, obviously, if we're worrying, you're saying emotion changes the brain. Are we changing our brain?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Whatever we're thinking, whatever we are doing, our behaviour, our thoughts, actually changes the structure of the brain as well. So our behaviour changes the brain, therefore the brain structure changes. So we continue that behaviour because we are enforcing it and reinforcing it all the time. So we've got this amazingly delicious feedback loop. They're delicious when they're good feedback loops, but when they're negative feedback loops and we're getting this terribly worried, stressed out situation, then that does us no good whatsoever.
Okay, so it's wonderful to talk to a neuroscientist about the brain, because I mean, the whole world and his dog, I don't know if you've noticed, everyone's talking about neuroscience, and it drives me bonkers because I'm saying, let's talk to the neuroscientists about neuroscience. So it's a pleasure to talk to you, Lynda. I can't tell you how wonderful it is. So here's the big question. I mean, this is the question. How do we help ourselves in times of uncertainty? How do we deal with this?
Well, little things. You can't do big steps because you're frightened. We're absolutely frightened witless about all sorts of things. We're worried about our health. We're frightened about our loved ones. We're worried about finances. We're worried about isolation. A lot of worries. By the way, there's a caveat here. Lockdown is terribly stressful, but there's plenty of other stressful things that were happening before lockdown and will continue to happen after lockdown is over and COVID-19 is hopefully a distant memory. So these issues are with us all the time. It's not just because of the pandemic. Okay, so the small things we can do is we need to get our minds into some sense of reality, some sense of anchoring our mind so that we're not in this world of fantasy and worrying about things that may not happen. So we do that by scheduling things that make our day have some kind of pattern to it, have some kind of normality to it, for want of a sort of word, if there is such a thing as normal. So we need to schedule stuff, and we also need to, I'm very much in helping people control their destiny, being in charge of their destiny, being in charge of their business, being in charge of their behavior. So if we can control the small things, we go from helpless to hopefulness. Okay, and that's really important. So we need to, because when we feel hopeful, we start to feel more motivated. And when we start to feel more motivated and anticipate the good things that can happen, for instance, you're going to have that lovely bubble bath later, small things. Or, yeah, might have a glass of something decent or whatever, small things, not a bottle, but hey, you know, we all do daft things sometimes. But just small things, and oh my goodness, and please exercise, because exercise, it's not just about the physical effort that's going on, it's also giving ourselves a sense of control, a sense that we're in charge of our destiny. I am deciding I am going to do 10 press-ups. I am deciding I'm going to run around the block. I'm deciding I'm going to run up and down the stairs 20 times. I'm in control. So our brain goes, okay, we can do this, we can handle this. The feel-good neurotransmitters will start to spark a little bit more, the dopamine, the serotonins, all of those other delicious things, even oxytocin, which is the bonding chemical, because when we're stressed, what we tend to do is we look for people who we can connect with. So even if it's remotely, we look for some kind of relationship that we can have, which helps us. So all of those lovely, delicious, feel-good neurochemicals will happen if we feel in a more control of our destiny. Small things.
So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to create our own certainty, aren't we, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And some people are more resilient than others. Some people don't mind uncertainty. Other people find it horrendously frightening place to be, and some people are in the middle. But whatever we're doing, we can improve upon it.
Okay, this is exciting. So imagine now, because obviously you work with leaders. So I'm a leader, I've got a team of people. How do I communicate anything if I don't know anything?
Be honest. Be absolutely honest. People aren't stupid. You know, you've got to be transparent. You've got to be saying, look, we don't know anything, but we've got to move forward. Even if it's just a plan for the week, not a year's plan, not a 3-year plan. Let's make a plan. Can we work on it together? You've always got to be the leader. You've always got to be the leader, but you need to be a really good listener and pay attention to people. And do you know what? When we're paying attention to people, we need to slow down to do it so that they really feel you're listening. That is so important. People are going, no, just slow down and really listen and get input from your team of where you think this is going to go. Okay, let's make a plan and let's do it together. Be very, unite your team, know them and us, because everybody will be shooting from the hip because they're coming from a place of fear. So we need to actually get them as a cohesive team.
That's really interesting what you're saying about being honest, because I think if we look back at the beginning of this, Boris Johnson was very honest. He said, you know, many of us are going to lose people, going to lose friends and family. And that everyone was shocked at that, I think, to start off with, because we were all in denial, but he was honest. So being honest, you have to be honest about the bad news too, is what you're saying.
Always, just always, you know, a very senior CEO I know always says you only have to apologise for the truth once. Don't lie. People will never trust you again. If they don't trust you, you're on a hiding to nowhere in a leadership role. So tell the truth. Tell the truth as far, okay, you can't, perhaps there are certain things the shareholders will stop you saying, or anybody very senior or whatever's going on in the business as a whole. But when it comes to the information that is relevant to the team you're speaking to, always be honest.
Okay, so what about being positive? Because you were saying that, you know, what you're putting in the brain can change the brain and it has an effect. Is it important for us to be positive, or is it inappropriate at the moment when people are losing loved ones, losing their jobs, not earning money, in fear, in uncertainty? What's your take on that?
I think people underestimate the value of all emotion. We're all, you know, we're supposed to be pursuing happiness all the time. I'm sorry, that's far too exhausting. To be happy all the time would be desperately exhausting. It's just, and that's not helpful. You know, anger, fear, guilt, all of these emotions are valuable. They all do a job to keep us safe, to keep us alert, to keep us on the ball. They all do a job. What is harmful is when we hold on to emotion for too long. Now, emotions are fleeting. They go up and down, but they leave a feeling. So if we are left in a feeling, a bad mood for days, that's not helpful to anyone. So we need to feel the emotion and then let it go. Now, if that is a positive emotion or a negative emotion or somewhere in between, some people don't like to label emotions like that, but that's all fine. But I think to use the word positive emotion and positive psychology, actually, a lot of people could be quite irritated by it. I understand that the psychology of it, and there's some extremely good research behind it, but I think actually what is better is to put the brain in a pleasurable state. And what I mean by a pleasurable state is one of the best ways of doing that is through kindness, generosity, and altruism. So when actually we are, I mean, this at the moment is Mental Awareness Weeks, stimulated by kindness. If we actually are considerate to one another, have empathy for one another, respect one another, have compassion for one another, we put our brain in a much more efficient and effective state than we can possibly imagine. So I think sometimes that rewording things, semantics matter, words matter. So I think we need to be careful with the words we use when we discuss these things.
Okay, so I'm Italian. I am highly emotional. So can you give me a tip when I get angry or I get upset, is there a way of letting it go quickly? Because I mean, when I'm angry, I'll have a bit of an outburst and actually it's over. But when I'm sad, sometimes I sort of find myself stuck there. Is there anything I can do to get out of it more easily?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the emotion that you will feel will be unconscious processing, and it will be automatic, unautomatic processing, and therefore it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And once it's happened, whatever the emotion, take a breath. Just take a breath and just think to yourself, okay, I've got to get my prefrontal cortex working here. At the moment, my limbic system's going mental because it's mental. Sorry, bad word, but it's going crazy. Another bad word. So there's a lot going on in the limbic system at this point. So, but we need the prefrontal cortex to be working, which is actually the decision maker, the problem solver, and all of those high order executive functions going on. So we need to take a breath and allow the prefrontal cortex to go, excuse me, limbic system, hang on a minute. Just we've got to work this out as a team here. Let's get Maria out of this state of feeling sad, because she knows that, and you know, you're saying to yourself now, you know that whatever has happened, it's not about you, it's about the person who is firing something at you. Or it's a situation that perhaps you can't affect at all. So let's think about this logically. And if I can't affect it, then I'm not doing myself any favors by putting all of these neurotransmitters in such a negative place, and the stress hormones going mental again, but raging around the system, which means that I could become very ill. I could have high blood pressure, heart disease, even some cancers are caused by chronic secretions of cortisol, the stress hormone. Not good, not good. So just feel it, take a breath, think about it, and talk yourself out of it.
Okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to grab for a glass of vino. I shall take a breath instead. Tell me, I'm curious, can you inherit emotions? Because my mother is a real warrior, and I've as I got older, I've become a warrior. I can see myself behaving like my mum. I worry about everybody else. I can't live their lives. I can't make their decisions, but I'm turning into my mum. Have I inherited that?
You're talking about the nature-nurture debate, and you can't get to the bottom of it. You know, I mean, we're going to be that one's going to be going on for centuries, I think. Nature-nurture debate, is it learned behaviour? Is it something that you've observed in your mother and you've blocked away in unconscious memories, and now as you get older, it's starting to come to the front? Is it something you've inherited biologically? We'll never know. But the thing is, always when it comes to the brain, is learning about it enough so that the awareness helps you. And that's what I love to do. I love to show people that, you know, you're in so much more control than you realize, so much more in charge of you, and therefore others, by the way you behave. But you do that by understanding a little bit about the brain, but properly understand it properly.
That's excellent. That's really good. I'm going to finish on quite a big question here for you. What is the psychological effect of coming out of lockdown, and what does this mean to people individually and with their work?
Well, it's interesting. It's becoming very interesting. I think coming out of lockdown is a bigger worry, because we've had isolation, which is exceptionally stressful, especially if really isolating on your own in your home. We've had domestic abuse on the increase. We've had all sorts of terrible things going on. But I think coming out of lockdown is going to create another layer of fear. And that fear is now, oh my goodness, I've got to take responsibility for myself. It's now, I'm not being told. It's like a teenager just got their driving license. Think, oh crumbs, I can drive now, this is so exciting, but oh no, I could actually smash the car up. You know, it's an interesting layer of uncertainty and fear, because now all of a sudden the government are not saying you've got to do ABC. They're saying, well, do DEF, but think about it, be logical. And it's like, it's frightening. I think it's more frightening coming down out of the lockdown. And also people are lulled into a false sense of security, because there are a lot of people who have not been affected by COVID-19 at the moment, but that doesn't seem to mean they're not going to be, because it's still there. So it's an interesting one. We have to be very careful and keep doing what we have been doing and been advised to do in lockdown, and that is our immune system is our best friend. So we need to eat well, we need to sleep properly, we need to drink lots of water, we need to exercise. All those things we know, don't let them disappear just because we're starting to go back to work, because we still need a strong immune system.
That is an excellent piece of advice to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Lynda.
Thank you.